this is our panel before tea, and we're going to talk about something that should interest us. That interests me, is how are we going to transfer skills to the next generation? You're a pro. I know you don't like me interrupting, so I'll do my best, but that's your timer. And then I will bring the questions from the audience. From
100%. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Bernard, for the opportunity. And I think when I look at the panel, we've got a very good spectrum of personnel and industry leaders who bring quite valuable insights. Phillip, who I have sat in a panel with before, is a producer, so he will give the perspective of the producer. Bonga there is from the regulator, from the National Youth Development Agency, so he will tell us exactly what the government is doing to assist the likes of Phillip and James, who is actually the engineer who helps develop the plants that Phillip then utilizes to give us the assets that we need in order to spur economic growth in our nation and in the world. So I believe we've got a very good spectrum of different views. I have, when I spoke to everyone last week as we were preparing for this, I did challenge them to say that let's also be contentious because, you know, this man is Mr. Contention himself. So let's see how we can outdo him, if that is possible. But yeah, so I'll start with you, Phillip. Right? As per our discussion last week, I mean, if we look at your current workforce and the current initiatives and everything that you as ARM are looking at, what would you like to share with the audience?
Thank you very much, and then to the colleagues as well, thanks for taking time to come and listen to us. I think maybe just as an opening statement and remark, the South African labor market is facing a paradox. You know, the aspect of we have a high unemployment rate, and on the other hand, we've got an acute skills shortage. You know, the skill that you need to execute, there's a pool of graduates who are highly unemployed, and yet on the other side, we say we have this challenge. So we do have the ability as a country, you know, with the current potential workforce, to really, you know, execute and deliver high economic growth rate. I mean, you heard the comment that was made that the US is basically growing at about 3.8. I know last year around September, there was an announcement that we were focusing 1.5. And as an industry through B4SA, we really, you know, made a commitment to say we'd like to see that 1.5% really being doubled to 3%. And we need the skills, regardless of how good, you know, your strategy is. If you don't have the requisite skill set, you're not going to be able to execute accordingly. And unfortunately, that skill, you know, have to be developed. If you ask a lot of us who are sitting in here, we have really been through a journey. Some, I don't know, Bernard, most probably more than 50 years, you know, but some 30 years, 35 years to get to where we are. So you don't just go and pick up these graduates and really convert them overnight into industry leaders. They have to journey, they have to walk that journey, and they have to really be, at some stage, be taken, you know, a walk alongside by those who have really been through that journey. And if you look at where we are at ARM in terms of our workforce, I mean, we employ a total of about 21,700 employees, and of that, 27% is female, right from the board level all the way to the lower levels. And we sitting with about 7.5%, you know, that is generation millennials. And what is very interesting with the millennials is that, you know, they prefer teamwork, they prefer working in an open communication type of engagement, express themselves. Unlike some of us, Generation X, more compliant, structure. You know, when they tell you go and work from home, you say, no, I want to go to the office, you know, because I'm going to be more productive. But for them, they say, please, you can even send me to Mauritius. Just tell me what you want. I'll deliver that, and tell me when you want it. So we do have about 7.5% who are millennials. 76% is Generation X, and we're sitting with about 17% on the baby boomers. Those are basically those that have run their journey. They're almost about to pass the baton to the next generation and to go and really fishing with Bernard.
So, yeah, so there's that contention coming through.
Yeah.
James, dovetailing into what Phillip has said, tell me about your business.
Okay, so we, people wouldn't know, we've got about 4,500 employees globally. Of that, about 50% are on operations, so let's say the other 50% are on project engineering. That gives us, in South Africa alone, we probably have 500 plus engineers. So we're probably one of the biggest employers of engineers in the country. Look, it was interesting to me to look at the age profile. We've always talked about this potential issue looming, which is the missing middle. We've got the young graduates, we've got the grey-haired plus 55s, let me call it that. And then the middle is going to immigrate or change industry because they don't like mining. Actually, looking at our profile, our average age about 45, and quite a nice curve around that, actually. So not anything to be too concerned about. I think immigration has been an issue, but it's been an issue for 40 years. I mean, and we go through cycles. We're not in a particularly bad cycle now. Actually, we do have people coming back. So I'm not losing sleep about that. We lose skills into the industry, our clients particularly, and we've got used to that. And it's a cross we have to bear, like putting skills back into the industry. But I think, our challenges are not really what we see today. It's really how do we think about the future and the dynamics of that future, which we're going to get onto. So I think for now we're relatively in a good place. South Africa is a net exporter of skills, particularly engineering and mining skills, and look, I just think technology is going to drive a lot of change in the way we think about skills and talent, and particularly how we develop. And I'm glad to see that the score that came up there, the highest, was, are we mentoring people for the future? Because that's what it's about. If I look at where I do lose sleep, it's specialist areas. Some of mine, shaft, winders, mills, those experts who are wrong side of 55, difficult skills to replace, and that's where we need to focus. We need to make sure that we are taking that younger generation and we are moving them up the curve, because that's where our risk lies.
100%. Now, Bonga, when I think of the future workforce, or as I would say, the evolving workforce, for you as the regulator, what are you seeing, and what are the initiatives that you're pushing forward with regards to that, in order to prepare the country for what we are seeing the world is trending towards? And I accept that it's a crystal ball, and what we're seeing today may not be the truth, but there must be some strategies that you guys have come up with.
No, thanks, and greetings to the audience. So, your language is a bit problematic, to say the regulator, because it places the entire burden of the state on the National Youth Development Agency, who I'll admit that our mandate is very broad, which is to largely deal with youth development in South Africa, with a priority around the unemployment rate specifically, and that's why then the conversation around skills becomes quite critical for us in how do we coordinate with, for example, your Department of Higher Education Training, your basic education, to make sure that we prepare young people for the future workforce. But I think for us as the NYDA, what we are saying is that how do we institute TVET reform, for example, where there's a lot of young people who don't make it to the university system, but are now in what we call neither in employment or training, who can participate, for example, in the mining sector or in agriculture, but I'll speak specifically in mining, that there are currently within our TVET sector not really programs that allow for entry-level posts and training for young people, which historically, I might not be that old, but I would know that many of you sitting here in this room, even very seasoned miners, came through, for example, learnership programs, not really traditional university. I was speaking to a friend of mine who serves on one of these, the Council for Geoscience Support, and he says, look, you know, you don't need a university degree to dig a hole, right? So the point is that a lot of the skills that are within mining, young people who have basic training, but with the right support and learnership from the sector can actually do. So we're talking to the Department of Higher Education and Training to see how do we create programs within our higher education system that enable mass kind of skilling. Because currently your top universities will produce very great engineers, but it's not enough for the type of mass employment opportunities that we're looking for. But besides that, I think there's also a push for entrepreneurship, to say that as the NYDA, we fund a lot of SMMEs, and that's also why we're here today, to say that how do we partner with the sector to support young entrepreneurs who have potential, where we can give them funding, but the business opportunity unfortunately lies on the private sector or lies with the actual mines themselves. So we believe that there's a lot of skills transfer that can happen at a level of supplier development, that your likes of ARM can do, your Ceritis, your Exaros, to create a new layer of entrepreneurs within the mining sector. And that's where we see mass employment opportunities, and that's where we see mass economic opportunities for young people, where we deliberately, as a state, put money behind emerging entrepreneurs that are showing potential, so that there's a proper skills transfer at a new pace. And I think a great example of this, for example, Seriti, which I think the minister likes to say is now bigger than Pick and Pay. But that is through deliberate government intervention, where the state plays a leading role in making sure that there's new entrants in the space. And that's the type of support that we think, especially as NYDA, in terms of investments and partnerships, we can push to create a new layer of young people who are highly skilled, but who are also at a level of entrepreneurship and business development.
Well articulated answer, and my apologies for putting the burden of the state on you. James, coming back to you. From your perspective, the impact of AI in automating tasks, what's your perspective?
I think we must accept that AI is a reality. It's here. I mean, we see it in our business every day. We've had a small group of very, very smart engineers working on a particular solution in a simple design of a conveyor from concept to full detailed engineering, shop-ready engineering. And that's possible, even as we sit here today. So the reality is that AI is with us, it's there, it's happening in engineering, and engineering is going to automate rapidly over the next few years. That creates a couple of issues. I mean, I think I sat here last year and I was worried. I think I was worried about how are we going to get our workforce digitally ready. I don't worry about that anymore. I think technology has overtaken us. I mean, technology is now in the hands of people, even the ones on the wrong side of 55, as we've seen. You give them the tools.
You must get careful with this wrong side. The other side's of 55. Just get your terminology right, youngster.
But even with myself, I mean, what we are fortunate with, in our business with engineers is that what we forget is that, they are naturally self-taught. You give them tools, and technology these days is so user-friendly. What I need to spend money on now is actually digital, what we call citizen-led platforms. So we're able to create a platform where my engineers will take that Excel spreadsheet that they've been using for 20 years, code it into something much smarter, using things like Python and all these things that they never knew about 2-3 years ago. And all of them just take it up. In a weekend, they'll learn how to do it. And so it's around giving them the tools. Yes, AI will change a lot in our industry. There was an interesting article the other day at a macro level in the US about their issue of their labor force, i.e. they've got a problem in that some of the white-collar jobs of the future, so I'm talking accounting, legal, AI is going to decimate. And where they're short on the blue-collar side. They don't have skills to build infrastructure of the future. And I think that's an important lesson for us. So yes, we are going to continue recruiting great young engineers. There's tons of skill out there. Universities are great. But we're going to have to make them we're going to focus heavily on practical skills. How do we take a young engineer who's got all the smarts, got all the tools, and make them into an engineer that has that practical ability? And hence, the way we select and the way we look for engineers that will be building plants 15 to 20 years from now is critical for us. Are they, because technology will level that playing field around the smarts. Everyone will have the smarts. But we need the ones that have the capability to really go out there and build a career in engineering. And the only issue I have with the universities of today is that they've made engineering almost an academic outcome. Smart people want to do it for the credential. Most of those people, or a very large part of them, actually not sure whether they want to be an engineer. So where we need to design our training programs is much more at the practical level. So we need to take our graduates, we need to put them in at site, we need to send them underground and show them that this is, because it's easy for them to come up with answers, and they'll get the right answer. But they don't know why that's the right answer because they haven't done it for many years. And so what's critical is that we marry those two, the experienced engineers with the young, dynamic engineers, and we come out with a product that takes us into the next decade.
Perfect. Thanks, James. Phillip, from what James has said there, I'm picking up the whole aspect of marrying the skills that we currently have, the experience that we have with some of the people who have been in the industry for 50 plus years, like someone next to us here, and then taking the juniors who are coming up and putting it together so that we have the future-ready engineer. Now, it may not only be in the engineering space, but it will be across the entire workforce. So from an ARM perspective, how are you guys looking at keeping all of those learnings from the past so that the younger people who are coming up do not lose on that? Because there's a lot of things that, are learned through blood, grit, and gore, which we cannot just drop. Because as much as these tools are perfect, some things they just cannot see.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think, from our workforce representation, you can see that we're sitting with quite a number of generations, which basically give you an opportunity, to sort of stagger and plan, your succession planning. I mean, we normally keep it away from everyone. Succession planning, we've got this excellent engineer. He's already left with 3-4 years towards retirement. Who's going to take over from him? So the need to really be intentional, deliberate about that. And also, I like what you're saying, partnership, mapping, alongside-ership. Who's working alongside this young engineer who's highly energetic, fire-powered to take over the world. So somebody needs to really, someone who has really walked the path, need to really show, lead from the front. And I think there's a concept and a principle called the Mayoff principle. When you talk to mentorship, it says you have to model, model that to the person that you want to transfer the skill to, instruct that individual. You model, you instruct in your presence, and then you afford that individual an opportunity. And when they do the work, you observe. So it's a model, you instruct, you observe, and then you give feedback. I mean, these are the gaps that I've seen. Let's close these gaps, and this is how you really, get back. And I see also the aspect of mentorship. Remember that these young generation, they are tech savvy. I mean, many of us, you know what I'm talking about. I don't know how to open a certain, function in my laptop, and the next person that I call is my daughter to say, can you come and help me? She's doing metric, and she says, hey, next year when I'm out of the house, you and mommy are going to struggle because I'm not going to be here any longer. So they're tech savvy. So there will be that dual mentorship. There's certain skills that they already have that they'll pass on to that elderly mentor who will be bringing most probably the technical skills, and they can really bring what you call the soft skills in terms of their ability to navigate through those technological opportunities and aspects.
I like what you just touched on there, that I think sometimes we make the mistake of assuming that it's a one-way street, but it's actually a two-way street where the older generation is learning from the younger generation, and the younger generation is learning from the older generation. And that whole symbiotic approach actually enables us to actually progress further forward, because a lot more is done in collaboration than in dictation. All right. Bonga, James said something interesting earlier about universities, and it touches on an aspect there I put on the notes we had discussed about retraining new recruits, right? And what I mean by that is, James mentioned that he feels that universities have made engineering more of an academic outcome than actually a practical outcome. Your view on that?
Look, I think within the value chain of economic development and the growth of the sector, I think everyone has a role to play. And I think the universities at an academic level probably have done their part in terms of creating a curriculum which is internationally competitive. If you look at Wits University, probably top 15 mining schools in the world, whether it's UP. So I think our universities at a level of curriculum have done very well to create an internationally competitive curriculum that makes our graduates, and probably many of you here, to be the best in the world, right? But where now you need to take it a step further is where the private sector or the actual mining houses themselves offer some form of practical training experience for these young people to then learn what from the textbook, what is actually happening on the ground, right? And I think so everyone has a role to play in this space of development, because there's a very interesting concept which I learned very early on in mining, which is this thing of skin in the game. And you can't buy that, and you can't learn that in a classroom. So there's only so much that universities can actually do in terms of developing, the next layer of young people within the workforce. However, what I do believe that perhaps we can do better in terms of the development of young people and in terms of education and training is actually investing in being more deliberate in management and executive level kind of support for young people that come into the space. So I would encourage the sector to take a chance on young people that who are showing potential in your companies, who are below the age of 35, so that when you need to have someone who succeeds, that engineer who's got 4 years left till retirement, you've got a pool of well-qualified, well-trained, who've got experience at the highest level that you've actually given a chance to. Because all of us here are a product of someone taking a chance on you. And we ought to have that as well within, these boardroom discussions, to say that there's a young person who's showing great potential, the academic background checks out. How do we prepare him to become the next CFO? How do we prepare him to become the next mine manager, or so on? So mining houses and private sector companies need to be deliberate in identifying talents within its own ecosystems and institutions that are ready for the next layer of leadership. And for me, that's the type of training and support and mentorship that actually matters, because then you will not have a paralysis when people who have retired and you find actually there's no one who's there to kind of take over. And I think, a company that's doing this quite well, for example, Seriti. Look at the CFO of Seriti Green, how young that person is, right? And I think that can be a model for many of these big mining houses, and to take a chance on young people and not to be afraid to give them responsibilities and positions of leadership. I think that's what will train and actually develop the next
all
layer.
the young people in the audience is going, yes, 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 yes. I can see the difference. Minister Mantas went no, and Deputy Minister Pumzile went yes.
Maybe can I come in as well, that we don't have to already pass the blame just on the institutions to say maybe the curricula is irrelevant or what. We have to get involved. It's a collaborative effort. They producing these products for us. I remember some few years ago I got involved, I was invited, and I really appreciated that, by vets to really be part of the panel that was going to review their curriculum. we're able to sort of identify where the gaps were with that curriculum and the latest practices, and we're able to give input to say, if you want these people to be ready for the industry, these are the inputs that need to go in there. So there's a need within that tripartite, partnership for the institutions to frequently review and really invite the industry expert to come and give input so that at least we create that. And also, for me, coming from our era where by the time you graduate, you would have really accumulated quite a lot of shifts. Today is different. You go and find a final year student who has never been underground. And that for me is really heartbreaking. And I'm saying, even talking to the industry leaders, if we employ 5 graduates to come and do a 3 months VEC work, they're not going to pull your business into bankruptcy. I'm really urging us. Can we come alongside? Let's create an enabling environment which was created for us to get to where we are. If we want to see sustainability, economic growth, and those improved outputs and efficiencies and productivity, let's get involved. Let's not be spectators. Thanks.
No. Thank you for that. And I think another thing that's just coming through is that it's a collective effort, and we as an industry have to actually open ourselves out to actually be able to go to the universities to say we're willing to assist, and the universities themselves have to also come to us and say, yes, let's work together. So I think in everything that we have said, I think we're all pulling in the right direction to say that we have to work together as an industry, and we have to include our other stakeholders like the educational and others in order for us to actually keep our industry going forward. Because one thing, I went to a career fair in a very nice part of the country, somewhere in Stellenbosch there, and when I told, I was speaking to one of the students there, and they were saying that, oh, you're in mining, oh, what a dirty business, And then I asked that individual to say, okay, so what industry do you want to be in? He said, no, I want to work for Google. But then if you look at the level of technology on them, smartwatch, those funny rings, the headphones, the cell phone, and I was like, I wanted to correct them and say that, look, if it wasn't for mining, all of the technology you have there wouldn't actually work. But felt it was a lost case because they wouldn't get it, so I left it, But I think that is the reality of what we're dealing with, because there is a perception that our industry is not as, dare I say, use this word, as sexy as the others, like in the tech sector. So we are fighting that uphill battle to actually attract the right recruits in, because they all want to go into that. But being cognizant of time, we wanted to talk a bit about local talent and competitiveness, but I'm just going to jump forward onto, I think you put this one on the list, about reattracting skills from overseas back to South Africa. Now, thinking about it, and in all our discussions before the session, I think it's not an easy one to answer, because the reasons for people leaving South Africa or leaving any place are complex. They're not always economic. With most of the people I know who have left, it's actually a blend of socio-economic, right? And more on the social, less on the economic. I think we remunerate our people very well in our industry. I think we are on par globally. From what I see, we're a global entity. We're 40,000 employees globally. And when I see what our colleagues get paid in Santiago, in Greenville, in Perth, we're on par. But we still see that, I don't want to say people fleeing, that's the wrong word, but we still see people leaving. And you're right in saying that it goes in waves, up and down and up and down. But the question I then have is that, okay, how do we deal with this? And this is one of those times where, you know what, it's okay to be wrong. Because we have to come to a solution combined, and it's only going to be through a lot of fighting, discussions, that will come to something that actually works. And it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. But anyway, Bonga, go on.
If I can come in, I think, look, you are speaking on a broad macroeconomic question than you are speaking to a sector-specific question. Meaning that if you want to attract, the question you're trying to solve for is that how do you attract international investments into the South African economy such that it attracts high value skills and so on and so forth, right? So I think for me, the answer to that question is that you want to create an enabling environment for business to invest in this country. You want to make it easy for anyone who wants to set up a mine, that process to be easy, right? So you make sure that your policies and legislations are attractive and, but administratively the process is smooth and it's simple. And you back also that up with an enabling infrastructure, which then speaks to, for example, your Transnet, even your Eskom. I think on the Eskom side, we've managed to create a stable supply of electricity over the past 3 years, where I think we can create a better enabling environment in terms of infrastructure support for the sector is probably fixing Transnet. However, where I think the DMRE and government as a whole can improve is administrative efficiency, right? That when someone applies for a mining permit or a prospecting right or a mining right, that it doesn't take longer than what it's supposed to take.
These young people,
The minister.
So as NYDA, we are saying that if we're going to solve youth unemployment, if we're going to attract high skills into the country, if we're going to attract investment, then let mining permits and rights be quick. Because then if someone is sitting with money in Canada or the UK to invest in a mine in Africa, why not go to Namibia where it's much quicker to invest in that mine? So let's create an enabling environment where our administrative processes are very quick and efficient, such that once you've got the capital that's coming into the country, it then regenerates itself into the human capital that I think is a question that you're trying to solve for. But I think we must make it easy for business to do business in South Africa so that people can invest in new mines and say, because we're also, a criticism I think to the sector that I also want to place is that we are not investing in new mines. We need to invest in exploration. And for that to have, that's when you'll start to see more and more high skills coming into the country, because outside of the traditional big mines that are there haven't been new mining mines that have been created over the past couple of years. So I think we need to invest more in exploration, and that will result in more investments.
James, you had put your hand up.
Yeah, look, I wanted to be a bit controversial and say the question is not really the right question. The good thing about most engineers that we have is if they really wanted money only, they would have done banking. They wouldn't have been engineers. So they are engineers because they want to build stuff. And they want to be a part of exciting projects. Now, from our perspective, why is it that 50+% of my people are in Africa or the Middle East doing jobs? Because that's where the jobs are. If the jobs were here, I'll bring them back. So I don't have an issue around that. I lose sleep about a much bigger issue, which is if one day we get simultaneously big infrastructure builds, road, ports, rail, plus mines at the same time, we don't have the contractor capacity to do that. We don't have the civils, we don't have the structural, all of that kind of blue-collar construction type world has been decimated. We don't have it. And that's what worries me the most, not the engineering skills.
You mean to say these construction mafias don't have real skills? I thought they've taken over.
Phillip, your view, sir.
Look, I think you made a mention of are we also globally competitive, in terms of our skills. And I think the answer is a big yes. And if you're not sure, just follow Natasha Phil-June's story. She's our own proudly South African, leading the first woman to be appointed at Newmont as a CEO and president, leading a 1.6 trillion rand market cap, #1 gold producer in the world, all the way from here.
Northwest University.
And if you still also doubt, you can follow Duncan. I mean, he's a Vetsi. He studied at the same institution where I studied. Can we really do it? A big yes.
He's also doing okay, yeah. It's for a Vitsi especially.
Yeah, and then the question in terms of how do we recruit them back? Obviously, as you said, it's not just a mere economic issue. There's quite a number of challenges. We know the reasons why some people leave. And obviously, we have to sort out those social, foundational issues to make it more attractive, and also to create a compelling vision as to why they need to come back. What is in it for me to go back and really give value. And basically, and South Africa is one of the best countries. It's a beautiful country, so we have to really reposition it, all of us, and make sure that we send a good story so that it's attractive and people would come and want to really retire back at home.
100%. So, thanks to everyone on the panel. I think the different views actually add more value because we have the broad spectrum, and I think it's been valuable to everyone who has been listening to us. But in 30 seconds, what is your parting shot? Starting with you, Phillip.
My parting shot is you can have a very good strategy, but if you don't have those foundational pillars, in terms of structure to support that strategy execution, staffing it with the requisite skill set, that strategy is just not going to get anywhere. So, we have to really develop those skills, identify potential, come alongside, put those deliberate and intentional plans to advance people, and give them a chance, like somebody gave me a chance.
Perfect. Bonga?
Thank you. I think from my side, it's just to say to the sector, but to everyone in the room, that let's invest in the youth, let's invest in young people, and let's be deliberate about how we do it. Where you have resources and access, especially as mining houses, give business to young entrepreneurs who are showing potential. Make sure that within your value chain and your spend in terms of products and services, that you are deliberately creating a new layer of entrepreneurs in South Africa through spending and putting money into the hands of young people. There are many credible young African businesses that are doing very well that just need that extra push to become globally competitive or at a much larger scale. And let's also use that as a platform to make young people move from service providers to ownership, where a contract miner comes through your system, and as a result, after years of mining and having a great experience with Anglo, a mining house, are today mine owners in South Africa. And that's how we can drive the type of development that we want to see, by putting resources available for young people and also investing in their growth in terms of job opportunities and management experience, and giving them a chance at that level in your boardrooms so that we can see this country grow, so that we can see youth unemployment rate come down. And that's how you actually invest in this country, by putting resources behind young people, so that tomorrow your kids' futures are bright, but the future of this country is also bright. I think that's what I would think. Thanks.
Very quickly, I would just say that I think digital transformation and AI, whatever you want to call it, is really changing the game at a skills development level. We need to accept that. We need to think completely differently about skills development. We need to change some of the rules of the past and be a lot more creative and innovative around how we select talent, grow talent, and transform the skills for the future.
Perfect. Over to you, Bernard.
Yeah, you're leaving me with no time. The questions are going broad and beyond mining and rural. I want to perhaps just deal with the questions that are more specifically mining industry, because I think that's what we're trying to address here. I would point out to bright young people that the successful age for entrepreneurship is 45 plus. And I think in this country we need to recognize that entrepreneurship is not a solution for school leavers. It's not supported by the facts of the world. What we are failing our young school leavers in is we do not give them learnerships. I think that's common cause. We agree. I know Minister and I do discuss this as well. And then we make people put a village into poverty to go to varsity to get an engineering degree, and then they have no skills. So I want to ask Fluor and EAME and DRA, are you giving enough bursaries? And I'm talking about the bursaries for the skills I'm interested in right now. Technical, engineering, and geology, and so on. Do you think you give enough bursaries?
From my perspective, I would say, do you want to go first?
No, let him go. I'll ask Fluor as well. I mean, he can't just be here and, you know.
So,
Yes or no?
It's a yes, because
You think you give enough? How many are you giving?
I can give you the exact numbers, but it's around 20 or 30, considering the number.
But how many people do you employ?
In this region, it's at around 200.
20 out of 200. I would accept that as good enough. Yeah.
But there's another aspect that I just need to touch on, that a lot of these bursaries for us, and if you see the developmental plans that we create, there's a system we call Fluor Cares, where we actually take a portion of our profits, right, to actually develop people. Because we recognize that if we do not develop the talent, we will fail as a business. So we are quite intentional about that. I can talk about the head of our control and instrumentation division. We took him through university. We identified him at one of these fairs. We've paid for him. He's now the organizational unit manager. He is the head of department. And he's running all the oaks like you very well.
No, fantastic. I mean, I wish him luck running people like me. But I think I want to go, Phillip, where you were. I mean, when I was at varsity, everybody had a bursary. With that came a commitment to work. With that came on-job training. And a lot of people left because mining wasn't for them, but it was an enabling environment. We go to VETs today and TACs today and UJ today, less than 30% of mining engineering students have got bursaries. So somewhere between the nice talk at conferences and the reality, there's a lot of bullshit floating around. So is ARM giving enough bursaries for future engineering?
I do believe that we are giving enough bursaries. I mean, on the top of my head, it's most probably around 325.
How much?
325 buses that we're sponsoring. And beyond that, we do also have a partnership, with the Motsepe Foundation. I mean, there's a youth program where they really put a database together, for the unemployed young people. I mean, we committed to that, and I still remember that even in terms of our IT assistants who provide a service to our building, he always walks around with a young person, and that one person has been really brought from that. So we do really, I believe, do our best. I mean, also pleased to know that one of our production managers, at Two Rivers Mine, comes from a community, basically recruited through, supported. And also there's also children of employee, support assistance. If your child is eligible to go to university, we do basically contribute something.
And are you then prepared, if I sit here and say to you, but I'm not sure that 300 bursaries for 21,000 employees is actually enough. It's a fantastic number. I'm just being deliberately challenging. But you are unencumbered by this mining, but you also have to give bursaries for social sciences and other people. You can only give bursaries for engineers. Do you? And do you give enough?
We give a lot. I'm not sure it's enough. Look, it's a difficult number because we've got a number of business units, and our operations business units also have some bursaries, but many trade apprenticeships. They also into the community, schools, etc., etc. Pure engineering bursaries, we're probably, I think, 30 to 40. Where we make a really big difference, I think, is in our graduate program. We've got a very big graduate program, very structured. So we want to take those engineers of the future and really give them 2 to 3 years of practical experience across many sites, across many operations, and turn out a great engineer at the end of that. And I think that's where we've put a lot of our effort into.
Minister Mantas, and maybe if I can up with you later, because you're a social scientist, and we don't want more social scientists. That is common course. If you study social sciences, you become a unionist and a minister. We want engineers who can build mines. So,
can I just add something?
Now I've stirred you all up. You didn't answer.
Can I just add the last comment? I mean, also, over and above that, we do have partnership with universities where we really contribute. I mean, if you pass through the freeway, you would have seen the previously known Chamber of Mines building is now a building, because there's a contribution that we make into a number of institutions to support beyond the bazaars, also the research chair.
I am very aware that the mining industry sponsored the technical departments of the universities extensively. every single one, UJ, Pretoria, Wits, and that is part of stepping into a gap that is left by underfunding. But I'm personally quite obsessed with bursaries and the bursaries mutual commitment of the student commits to work for 4 years and the company commits to develop the person for 4 years. You will never get me off that case. I'm even fighting with my minister about that. Ladies, gentlemen, now it's time's up. It's all up. It's tea time. Thank you very much. Let's invest in the future. Thank you.